Chapter 70, There's a Youngster. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The City of White Emperor at the origin of the Forgotten River. The Red River of 800 miles as territory. Who else could she possibly be? The only princess of Yao actually appeared here. People in the palace were very shocked. With the sound of friction of clothes, everyone stood up and prepared to salute. My mother is the Princess Royal of Great West Continent. Luo looked at people and continued speaking. My father is Bai Xingyi. Bai means white in Chinese. With these two names, the aura in the palace became even more depressed and nervous. Everyone remained silent as if they were dead. The two names represented authority and power. These two names were among the 5 saints. The couple in the city of White Emperor were at the same level as the Divine Queen and the Pope. The southern ambassadors all remained silent. After they saw Qin Changsheng, who was standing behind Luo, they felt even worse. People noticed the close relationship between Luo and Qin Changsheng a long time ago. As expected, Luo looked at the southern ambassadors, said, "My master is Qin Changsheng." "Mother, father, master." She said so, which meant that she placed the 3 at the same height. Different from what some people previously thought, Luo did not go to the Tradition Academy for fun, but rather she actually wanted to learn. She viewed Qin Changsheng as her family member and respectful elder. People inside the palace were all shocked and wordless. Even Go Hanshi's attitude became more serious. Who is this kid named Qin Changsheng? How could Luo place him at the same height as the White Emperor couple? Excuse me, how is my master not as great as Qiu Shanjun? Luo looked at the southern ambassadors, asked. The southern ambassadors did not have an answer because they couldn't answer. No matter how genius Qiu Shanjun was, solely from a status standpoint, how can one compare him with the master of a princess? Luo looked at the pedantic young scholar who spoke earlier, lifted up her eyebrows and asked, in order to resist the demons, humans need to unite. The South and the North need to make a union. So Su Yurong must marry Qiu Shanjun. Only because of the so-called righteous cause, you would force a woman to marry someone she doesn't want to marry. The young scholar said with a trembling voice, shouldn't we? Of course you shouldn't. Luo looked at the person and said confidently, she's the wife of my master, how can you make her marry another man? I really suspect if you are a demon spy. The young scholar's face was swollen red. He felt very angry, but didn't dare to say anything. Luo looked at the people and said, the righteous cause. I am the righteous cause. My master owned the righteous cause. How dare you use the righteous cause to threaten him? What a joke. The young scholar wanted to explain something, but after closer thinking, he realized that he couldn't say anything. Sweat poured down like waterfall on his face. No one in the palace dared to object to Luo's sentence. It was believed that if Su Yurong and Qiu Shanjun were married, the union between the North and South would accelerate. However, everyone knew that the union between Yao and humans was the fundamental base to fight against the demon race. If fighting against the demons was the righteous cause, then protecting the close relationship between Yao and human was the biggest righteous cause. In disagreement with the young scholar and other shameless people's logic, since Luo definitely would represent Yao to support the marriage between Qin Changsheng and Su Yurong, then anyone who attempted to stop this marriage was trying to irritate Yao to destroy the union between the races. Then what are they if they are not demon spies? In order to accelerate the union between North and South, are they going to offend humans' most determined and strongest ally? Nonsense. No one would make this choice. Even the Pope, the Virgin of the Southern Sex, the leader of the Li Mountain, or even the Divine Queen wouldn't take this action. The righteous cause. It was just selfish benefit, or another word, power. Think closely, this was truly laughable. The young scholar was entirely wet. Until now, he saw his intentions hiding under his clothes and the righteous cause. His face was still red, but now it wasn't due to anger, it was due to humiliation. The palace was wordless. Many people were as humiliated as this young scholar and didn't know what to say. Go Honsher looked at Luo Luo with mixed feelings. Anyone who still wants to retain some reputation should leave right now. What's the point of struggling here? Tang 36 looked at him and mocked, just give up. Your oldest senior can't marry her anymore. Or do you dare to kill Chen Chongsheng in public? The disciples of the Li Mountain Sword sect were standing. Hearing these words, they felt very angry. They grabbed the handles of their swords and then looked at Go Honsher. Go Honsher looked at him quietly. His eyes gradually lit up but were not sharp and were not more determined. The master of the Qiu Shan family remained silent ever since Chen Chongsheng took out the engagement. But now, he couldn't stand anymore. He stared at Tang 36 and said coldly, "Is Master Wen Shui still good?" Tang 36's expression changed slightly and said, "Want to suppress me by using my grandpa? Don't you feel any shame?" Qiu Shan family was an ancient family in the south. They cared deeply about their reputation. As one of the Wen Shui Tang family, Tang 36, of course, understood this. Tonight, many events occurred in the Ivy Festival. There were actually many opportunities for the two sides to modify the tension temporarily by stepping down and leaving. Yet because of some reasons, or more accurately, false judgments on the situation, the southern ambassadors made the wrong choices. This led to the current embarrassing situation. The current embarrassing situation, besides the above reasons, were also caused by Tang 36 and Luo Luo's continuous mockery. Luo Luo's scolding and mockery of people such as Elder Xiao Songgong were due to their earlier scolding and mocking of Chen Chongsheng. She didn't like such things, but with her background and identity, she had the reason to do something about it. Tang 36's scolding and mockery of people such as Xiao Songgong and the master of Qiu Shan family were entirely due to his personality. No matter what position in the family hierarchy or other aspects, he shouldn't act this way. He appeared too full of nonsense, too dissipated, and too unrestrained. Not every unrestrained person was a prodigy who could succeed later. They are more likely to be dandies. In Chinese idioms, prodigy return to the fold and succeed later. In many's eyes, Tang 36 acted very worldly and very disrespectful. He made others unhappy, unlike the member of a noble family and of course, unlike a young genius of Heavenly Academy. However, he did it because he disliked these people. Since he disliked these people, he had no reason not to scold them. This was his personality. He was only a 16-year-old youngster, a true youngster. He doesn't feel happy looking at the spring wind, doesn't feel sad looking at the fall rain, doesn't sigh looking at the winter snow, and doesn't feel annoyed looking at summer cicada. He only feels happy looking at things he likes, only feels annoyed looking at things he hated, only sighs looking at unfair things, and only feels sad looking at pathetic view of one's back under the falling sun. He likes to stay by himself and likes to sleep, but he doesn't like interacting with others. He is a bit narcissistic, very arrogant and confident. He lives freely and the matters in the world are unrelated to him. He will attentive to things that make him happy, and will be closed to things he likes. He is a youngster like that. His personality was just like that. Even if he isn't a genius on the honor roll of Green Cloud, and was only a young beggar taking sunbathes in the corner seeing pretty girls pass by, he would still whistle. Seeing rich people bully the weak, he would still secretly give them 2 kicks. He wouldn't even care if the guards tried to beat him up later. Therefore, he didn't have any friends in the capital besides Chen Chongsheng. Therefore, he offended many classmates in the Heavenly Academy including Zhuang Huanyu. Therefore, he said long time ago, if he met the little monster from the Priest's Academy who liked to bully ordinary people, he would definitely destroy him. Therefore, he couldn't come to the first 2 nights of the Ivy Festival. Tang 36 was a man like this. He likes what he truly likes, dislikes what he truly dislikes. So, people who liked him really liked him, such as his grandpa of the Wen Shui family and the vice principal Zhuang of the Heavenly Academy. The people who disliked him really disliked him, such as the current angry southern ambassadors. He didn't care. But there are people who care. How dare you? Apologize to the elder right now. A voice came up from the seats of the Heavenly Academy. Now everyone was standing because they couldn't see who was speaking clearly. Moments later, people realized it was actually Zhuang Huanyu. People all felt a little surprised. They didn't understand why he wanted to criticize Tang 36. What they didn't understand even more was why was he speaking. Even though Tang 36's words were worldly and disrespectful to the Li Mountain Sword sect and the Qiu Shan family, both Principal Mao Qiu Yu and Vice Principal Zhuang were in the field. Why did Zhuang Huanyu have the right to criticize the student? Although he was the genius ranked 10th on the honor roll of Green Cloud, he was still only a student. The principal had remained silent the whole time. Why could Zhuang Huanyu criticize Tang 36? Mao Qiu Yu turned around and glimpsed at Zhuang Huanyu. His expression was calm. Many people's eyes fell on Zhuang Huanyu. Zhuang Huanyu's expression changed slightly. He also didn't know why he said that before. But he already said it. How could he take it back? He closed his mouth tightly and with an angry face, he continued to stare at Tang 36. He thought he appeared indifferent and selfless, but he didn't know that, in others' eyes, he really misbehaved. The reason why Zhuang Huanyu suddenly misbehaved was very complicated. Tonight, many high-status people came to the Ivy Festival and even a genius like him had to sit quietly. Yet who would have thought, Tang 36, whom people normally didn't even bother to take a look at, was speaking loudly in front of people. This caused Zhuang Huanyu to generate hatred towards him subconsciously. The more important reason was because Luo Luo revealed her identity. The legend in Heavenly Academy fell back to the reality. He had imagined infinite times the future he had with the junior, but his dream was crushed tonight. The junior was the Princess Luo Luo. No matter how hard he tried, even if he became a genius and surpassed Zhou Shanjun, it would still be impossible for him to stay together with her. Deep disappointment and despair all turned into anger. But the love was still hiding in the bottom of his heart. He never told anyone, so his disappointment and anger tonight couldn't be released. At this moment, he saw Tang 36, the junior that he could criticize normally. Therefore, he said that sentence. The palace became strangely quiet. Everyone was looking at Tang 36. Previously, when Guan Fei Bai from the Li Mountain Sword sect had been scolded Tang 36 with, "How dare you?" Tang 36 returned back, "How dare your mother?" Now Zhuang Huanyu criticized him, what would he say? The southern ambassadors all felt happy, thinking that there was now a problem occurring among the Zhou people. They thought, how would you solve this problem? Go Hanshi glanced at Tang 36 and felt somewhat surprised. He frowned. Guan Fei Bai looked at Zhuang Huanyu, also frowned and felt somewhat unhappy. Tang 36's expression became a little gloomy. He looked in the direction of the seats for Heavenly Academy. None of his schoolmates responded to his look. Mao Qiu Yu sighed and was ready to say something. Vice Principal Zhuang's face was a little pale. He looked at him and shook his head. He wanted to say something but paused, as if he had a problem that he couldn't say. He remained silent for a while and then laughed bitterly and said, "That's so not fun." "It's certainly not fun." A sound came up next to him. Chen Chongsheng looked at him and said, "You don't look like your normal self." Chapter 71, the fourth person. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Not like my normal self. What do you mean? He rolled his eyes and asked. He saw it was Chen Chongsheng who said it, and suddenly, Tang 36's expression came alive. Just previously, you cursed out your opposition. Chen Chongsheng thought for a moment and said, and after you were finished with cursing them out, you would just go back to sleep as if nothing happened. Tang 36 looked at the seats of Heavenly Academy and fell silent. He whispered, after all, some people did treat me nicely. During the entrance exam of Heavenly Academy, Chen Changsheng saw a few things from afar. He knew that the vice principal cared for Tang 36 and now Tang 36 was looking at the direction of the principal as well. There must be a story behind this, and the vice principal should be the reason that Tang 36 behaved differently than his usual self. But, as a person, you should consider yourself before anything. Tang 36 looked at the seats of Heavenly Academy and thought back to the experiences he endured these recent months in the school. He thought back to the isolation from his schoolmates and what he endured in the first 2 nights of the Ivy Festival. The corners of his lip raised slightly and a mysterious smile was on his face. If it was any other time, Chen Changsheng wouldn't have supported Tang 36's decision due to his personality, even if he was his only friend. But after encountering so much tonight, a lot has changed. Just like Tang 36 fell into a shameless trap in Heavenly Academy, Chen Changsheng also barely escaped a black mighty dragon. He looked at Tang 36 and said nothing, but his calm yet firm eyes supported his decision. You want me to apologize to these southerners? Tang 36 looked at Zhuang Huanyu and said, this is boring, your actions are boring too. Shocking discussions were raised in the palace. Zhuang Huanyu was ranked 10th on the honor roll of Green Cloud. He was the leading role of the younger generation in the 6 Ivies and he was on the same level of the 7 rules of heaven who was dominate in the south. Although his previous behavior was off and was both discouraging and shameful, at the end of the day, he was still the face of Heavenly Academy. As a student of Heavenly Academy, it was disrespectful of Tang 36 to point out his faults so directly. It's boring and it's not fun. If it's not fun, why should I stay to play around? You guys think you can oppress me through my status as a student of Heavenly Academy, use your status as teachers to control me or use the excuse that you are a senior to shut me up. Because I am going to quit. Tang 36 looked at his former classmates and teachers and said calmingly, I have decided to leave Heavenly Academy. Everyone in the palace, after hearing all the news tonight, was shocked with his declaration. Heavenly Academy was the best school in the entire continent. Countless formidable Xiaoxianists came from this school and even the current pope used to be a student there. Many of the winners of Great Trial were also students from this school. Although in the recent years, the young students of Heavenly Academy were in the shadow of the 7 rules of heaven in the south, the Heavenly Academy was still the Heavenly Academy. No one dared to doubt the status of this institution. Everyone was proud that they could enter the Heavenly Academy. Many people struggled and endured so much just to enter the gates of Heavenly Academy. But tonight, someone actually requested to leave Heavenly Academy. While shock filled the palace, the faces of the students and staffs of Heavenly Academy turned gray. The face of Vice Principal even turned pale. I know a lot of people will ask me why. Tang 36 looked at everyone and said expressionlessly, Heavenly Academy has the best teachers, best students, and I must admit that I learned a lot from my time here. Even if I endured some hardship, it wouldn't be enough for me to decide to leave. But just like what I said earlier, the current Heavenly Academy is boring. It's boring and it's not fun. If it's not fun, then why should I stay to play around? It was a sentence that he said earlier and everyone thought back to it. Just because I said I'll handicap Tian Ji Air, the teachers and seniors of the academy banned me from participating in the Ivy Festival. Just because I want to challenge Zhuang Huanyu, someone sealed me in the library for 1 night. Don't tell me I have to think about the big picture. When did the old Heavenly Academy ever need to worry about other people's big picture? What about the current Heavenly Academy? It's even afraid of the family of Tian Ji. What is this? This is not the Heavenly Academy I read about in books. This Heavenly Academy is boring and not fun. Tang 36 looked at the students and teachers of Heavenly Academy. His words were informal but his expression was serious because they were words he spoke from his heart before his departure. After hearing his speech, the noises in the palace got louder because this youngster from Wen Shui mentioned the family of Tian Hai. This sentence was filled with context, but people only heard family of Tian Hai. It's even afraid of family of Tian Hai. He even used even in his sentence. He even thought he shouldn't be afraid of the family of Tian Hai. Prince Chenlu lowered his head. 2 liquor cups were on the table in front of him. The liquor inside reflected the light from the nightly pearls and was beautiful. He seemed to be attracted by this sight and forgot about the things happening around him. Mou looked at Tang 36 indifferently with a teacup in her right hand. The cup was steady. Tian Hai was the last name of the Divine Queen. The family of Tian Hai was the family the Divine Queen was born into. After that bloody power struggle a decade ago, Tian Hai replaced Chen to become the most powerful name on this continent, just like Bai for the Yao race. If political strength was considered, then it was without a doubt the most powerful in this world. In the current Zhou dynasty, even the people of Palace, where the Pope lives, treated family of Tian Hai with courtesy and respect. Even if millions of people hated the family of Tian Hai to their guts, no one dared to say such a thing in front of the public. Who else could be like Tang 36 and point out their flaws straight up? People were looking at Tang 36 with complicated expressions. Some respected him, some sympathized him, but most of them were thinking of him as an idiot. Was this youngster addicted to disgracing other people tonight? He wouldn't even let go of the family of Tian Hai. It seemed like Tang 36 didn't even feel the stares and never even considered the danger of his words. He looked at Zhuang Huanyu coldly and said, "I knew about the struggles you endured when you were young, but it's not a reason for you to blame everyone else. Don't think that everyone in this world owes you something. You pretend to be indifferent in front of people but keep on thinking and blaming inside. You already entered the top 10 of honor roll of Green Cloud, but you still think destiny isn't fair and that you can't be as strong as Qiu Shanjun. Who are you blaming? I can't stand it. I hate these kind of people. The current Heavenly Academy have too many of these kind of students and therefore, it's becoming more and more like a drama show. Everyone just whines all day and sings soft tunes. Obviously, it's boring." The palace got silent and people looked at the seats of Heavenly Academy. They looked at Zhuang Huanyu. Zhuang Huanyu was wordless for a long time. His expression slowly turned calm and he looked at Tang 36, "Previously I did misbehave. It's not up to me to judge whether you did wrong or if you cared about the legacy of Heavenly Academy. In addition, although your words are harsh to our ears, they do have some sense in them. But have you ever thought about the reason why, after you entered Heavenly Academy, the teachers and students disliked you? Why do you feel that we isolate you? Is this because of your pride? No, the students of Heavenly Academy should be prideful themselves. You are the son of Tang in Wen Shui. You were born with a golden spoon in your hand. After you entered the academy, you were cared for by the powerful figures. You could skip class and disobey the rules of the school. But what you got was no less than others. What about your classmates? Only after they worked hard could they reap the reward, and so, they disliked people like you, people who take the shorter path. Most of the students sitting on the scattered seats were from ordinary families. The dozens of young students of the Southern ambassadors were also mostly poor students. The 3 young men of 7 rules of heaven changed their expression after hearing Zhuang Huan's words. Go Han Shi, who was famous for his low background, fell into a deep wonder. The vice principal's face wasn't pretty because he knew that the big figure who cared for Tang 36 that Zhuang Huanyu referred to, was him. What you said was reasonable. Heavenly Academy has its own rules and legacies that were kept for thousands of years. Perhaps you and teachers believe that people could only become successful after enduring all the hardship and struggles. But my family is just rich. What else can I do? Should I pretend to be poor or should I spend all of my family's wealth? The Divine Queen would probably be happy from the results of that. Tang 36 shook his head, you have your reasons. I have my habits, and Heavenly Academy has its own rules. Tonight, there is no right or wrong between us, but since we are not fit for each other, then this thing will never get interesting, therefore, I will leave Heavenly Academy. You can stop talking, the vice principal yelled with a very gloomy face. Wen Shui's family of Tang had helped him when he was young. There were a lot of old stories between him and Tang. Since he promised the elders of the family of Tang to care of Tang 36 in the capital, he wouldn't just let Tang 36 fall deeper and deeper into trouble. Enough. Your father told me to take care of you and you really think I won't discipline you? Tang 36 looked at him and thought for a while. He scratched his head and said, Uncle Zhuang, you always say it's my father who told you to take care of me. But actually during the trip to the capital, I have already read the letter for you. I knew that my mother told you to take care of me. Therefore, you don't need to use my father to pressure me. Zhuang vice principal was so angry that his fingers were shaking. How could you read the letter? For some reason, Zhuang Huanyu's face got paler after hearing this. Tang 36 said, all things aside, I will leave Heaven Academy tonight. Zhuang vice principal said bitterly, you are such a child. Why don't you listen? The semi-trial is already over, and if you leave the school right now, what could you do about the great trial next year? Tang 36 was a little stumped as this was a real problem. That wouldn't be a problem. Chen Chongqing smiled and said, just come to my place. Tang 36 raised his eyebrows, go to your place. Chen Chongqing said, the students of Traditional Academy also have the permission to enter the great trial directly. He couldn't make a mistake about this rule. The reason he tried so hard to enter one of the 6 Ivies after he arrived at the capital was to skip the semi-trial and join next year's great trial automatically. But for some reason, fate led him to become the first new recruit of the Tradition Academy in many years. Tang 36 raised his eyebrow higher as if he found something interesting and new. How many people do you have now? 3. Chen Chongqing pointed at Luo and himself, there is another one left in Tradition Academy for tonight. You saw him before. Tang 36 was silent and then he laughed, count me in. Chen Chongqing thought for a moment, then we have 4 people. Chapter 72, please enlighten. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dropping out of a school is a big thing. Dropping out of Heavenly Academy is an even bigger thing. The reason why Vice Principal Zhuang's reaction was so strong was because he knew clearly that if a student left the Heavenly Academy, other schools would not dare to accept him. Yes, Priest Academy, Li Palace, Startacre Academy, and 13 Division of Green Light all had their own backgrounds, but ultimately, in the capital, the Heavenly Academy was the special one. How could he expect such a twist in the sequence of events? The Tradition Academy stepped up to take Tang 36. Zhuang Huanyu saw Zhuang Vice Principal's worrying expression and felt bitter. He looked at Chen Chongqing and said, he's a student of Heavenly Academy. The Tradition Academy doesn't even have a principal or teachers yet and you don't know the rules. You can't just accept him like this. As Zhuang Huanyu said, Chen Chongqing didn't understand the hidden rules and never thought that the Tradition Academy couldn't accept Tang 36. Nevertheless, Chen Chongqing turned around and reminded Luo, after we return, remember to add his name to the list. Don't forget to get his fingerprint as well. After hearing this, Tang 30 felt a little weird. He thought he just sold himself and was counting money for his owner. Luo agreed without a trace of hesitation. The people in the palace were a little surprised, especially the teachers and students sitting in the seats near them. They could see clearly that her attitude toward Chen Chongqing was exactly the attitude of a student to a teacher. The crowd was even more shocked. What did this youngster named Chen do to make Princess Luo respect and admire him so much? Sadly, it's a little late. Since he said he would join Traditional Academy, it was obvious that Tang 36 wouldn't take back his decision. He was only a little dissatisfied that he didn't enter the Tradition Academy earlier because the night would have been more interesting. He would have went out of his way to help a friend and maintain the face of an academy in ruins. How cool would that be? But now the entire continent knew Princess Luo Luo was studying in Traditional Academy, and just now, he joined the school. He never did maintain the face of the academy, but rather, it felt like he was trying to find a fast way out of trouble. Chen Chongqing knew what he was thinking about and thought he was thinking too much. Don't worry about these details. You don't have to worry about other people's opinions. Right now, there are only us in the academy where simplicity is at its finest. It's meaningless to make things complicated. Tang 36 thought the reasons were true, but he was irritated that Chen Chongqing was giving advice already. Tang 36 mocked, and now you're starting to teach me already. The people in the palace were looking at these three talking about their business in Traditional Academy. Their feelings were complicated, but they all knew that after tonight the school that once was in ruins will truly gain a new life. Tradition Academy, which was forgotten for many years, has officially returned to the eyes of the world. Yes, although the current Tradition Academy only had 4 students with no principal, no teachers and no servants, and it was still as quiet as before, after tonight, who would dare to ignore Tradition Academy like before? Clapping suddenly started in the palace. It was loud and steady and without a hint of hesitation or fakeness. It wasn't dragged out intentionally and it wasn't done in mockery. After the applause, Go Hansher's voice was heard as well. He looked at Chen Chongqing and the other two and then said sincerely, "Congratulations, Tradition Academy." Everyone's face froze. This was the second time Go Hansher spoke in tonight's Ivy Festival. Previously, when Chen Chongqing showed his marriage vow and silenced the entire palace, Go Hansher's first words asked Chen Chongqing to consider Su Yurong's feelings and decision. His words were calm and easy, but it pointed to the softest and weakest spots of human's heart. If the white crane hadn't arrived from the north, it would be hard to determine which direction tonight's situation would go. At this moment, he spoke out again. People in the palace were a little nervous. They knew something was about to happen. Mou was thinking of ending the Ivy Festival midway so that she could end the proposal, which had already turned into a drama, but because of Xiao Songgong's attack and Jin Yulu's shocking appearance, she couldn't do anything. So what was going to happen next? Tang 36 dropped out of Heavenly Academy and there was internal matter in the Zhou people. He joined the Tradition Academy directly afterwards, but all of this was irrelevant to the Southerners. The silence of the Southern ambassadors didn't mean they accepted what was going on. The Ivy Festival did not end, but rather, it had just began. Go Hansher's expression was indifferent, as if the South hadn't been embarrassed by Chen Chongqing. On my way to the capital, I already knew that the Tradition Academy had reopened. I had been thinking, after more than 10 years, the Tradition Academy, a place with such uncommon history, should indeed be revitalized by now. I was very happy about it. But I was curious, what type of person can take on such a great responsibility? He looked at Chen Chongqing and the other two and said, "Tonight I know. Princess Luo Luo is actually at the Tradition Academy, and the princess's master is actually a student of the Tradition Academy. With this, how can the Tradition Academy not be revitalized? Many people want to know, after all, how far did the Tradition Academy come by now, and I am no exception. Thank the Divine Queen for allowing all of the students in the South to participate in the great trial, and the court for even inviting us to the Ivy Festival this year." Upon saying this, Go Hansher left his seat and walked a few steps down, even though it only got him a few steps closer to Chen Chongqing's group who were standing by the door. But now, he was standing right in front of them. He spoke to them kindly and calmly. "Tonight is the 3rd night of the Ivy Festival, also the last chance for the 6 Ivies and other students who were invited to compete. We came from 10,000 miles away, and since we are participating in the Ivy Festival, we obviously can't miss it. I, as a representative of the Li Mountain Sword Sect, ask the Tradition Academy to please enlighten." In this case, "please enlighten" is a polite way of asking people to have a fight, or compete. The palace was very quiet. Although not as dead as before, strangely, people were not surprised by Go Honshi's suggestion. It was like everyone had already guessed that such thing would happen and actually hoped for it. But before Go Honshi said this, people actually didn't think of it. Tonight was the Ivy Festival. To the southern ambassadors, Go Honshi's suggestion was the best choice. If he directly challenges Qin Changsheng, people would think that the Li Mountain felt angry about their unsuccessful proposal for Qiu Shanjun and therefore wanted to revenge. He didn't mention the fight between Elder Xiao Songgong and Jin Yulu and the story that happened in the past. He didn't mention Princess Luo Luo's identity. And he also didn't mention Tang 36's disrespect to his sect but only mentioned the Ivy Festival. There's a rule in the Ivy Festival which said schools could challenge each other. This was not a rule made by the great Zhou First Emperor and it was also unrelated to the Second Emperor. The Ivy Festival was the great trial, and both had its history and traditions. Therefore, the rules in the Ivy Festival should still be respected, or were the Zhou people ready to break the rules themselves? The palace was wordless, people remained silent. At this moment, surprisingly, Go Honshi spoke up again. He looked at Qin Changsheng said indifferently, "Yes, what I just said was simply an excuse, or a reason." Qin Changsheng felt a bit dazed. Luo Luo felt a bit surprised. Tang 36 felt a bit shocked. They all didn't understand why he suddenly said this. People in the palace felt even more astounded. Tonight, too many things had happened. No matter right or wrong, to us Southerners, to us Li Mountain Sword Sect, they're not delighting things. More importantly, my oldest senior is not present to this thing so no one can hear his opinions. I think this is unfair. Go Honshi looked at Qin Changsheng calmly and said, "As a disciple of Li Mountain, I have responsibility to protect the reputation of my sect. As a junior, I want to represent my senior to show his attitude, and so although I know the excuse or reason I used is boring, but I still want to do something because we need to calmly leave the palace." Lastly, he made a bow to salute Qin Changsheng and said, "Please enlighten." The entire field was silent, everyone looked to Qin Changsheng, Luo Luo and Tang 36. Qin Changsheng looked at Go Honshi and remained silent for a long time. He knew Go Honshi's reasoning. Li Mountain Sword Sect wanted to retain some of its pride by challenging the Tradition Academy and through this process, prove that he was behind Qiu Shanjun. In fact, Go Honshi didn't hide his thoughts and put everything in front of people. Was this really justified? He looked at Go Honshi said, "This only seems appropriate." Go Honshi said calmly, "This isn't just, but open." Yes, his thoughts weren't justified, but the way Go Honshi put everything in the public, the proposal to directly challenge the Tradition Academy, was open and could not be criticized. Therefore, it's very hard to respond. Based on Qin Changsheng's personality, if he wasn't manipulated by the Dongyu general's mansion and the high-status people in the royal palace, he wouldn't have acted this way against the marriage. If he was by himself, facing Go Honshi's challenge, he absolutely would turn around and leave. But now, he wasn't by himself. He was representing the Tradition Academy. He already felt attached to the school that had a big banyan, a pond, a building filled with books, and an abandoned well. The Li Mountain Sword Sect was not challenging him, but the Tradition Academy. Then, he could not completely follow his own thinking. He looked towards Luo Luo and Tang 36 and wanted to know their opinions, but he found out helplessly that both Luo Luo and Tang 36 had strong desires in their eyes. Their eyes were extremely bright and burning to the extent that other people couldn't even look directly at their eyes. Indeed, people couldn't look directly at the two people's desire to fight and their fearless hearts. Fight or not? Qin Changsheng asked. There wasn't any principal or teacher in the Tradition Academy, only them. When facing such a big thing, obviously, they had to discuss it together. Luo Luo was still yielding and said, "If master wants fight, then let's do it." Tang 36 looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said, "They already said it already, won't you feel shameful to not fight?" It seems there wasn't a clear answer. Luo Luo said she would listen to his words. Tang 36 used a question, but in reality, everyone knew their meaning. Fight. Chapter 73, Unwilling. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Besides the wall in front of the mausoleum of the book, what did the Destiny Pavilion care about the most when evaluating honor rolls such as the honor roll of Green Cloud and the honor roll of Midas? The answer is the fights between elites on the honor rolls. Anyone that got on the honor roll, regardless of background, would have experienced at least one battle. Chen Changsheng, who did not have experience, asked, "Then, how do we fight? Who do we fight?" Luo Luo's eyes lit up and she held on to the handle of her falling rain whip using her right hand. She walked up and said, "When Master has a problem, his disciple will solve it." Of course, Tang 36 wouldn't let her take advantage of such a great opportunity to fight and said, "I am new. So you should let me prove myself." Nowadays, the Li Palace Sword Sect possessed a special status because its current young generation was very strong. Certainly Tang 36 was a genius, but he still couldn't compare to his opponents. That is not to say Go Hanshi or even the 3 young disciples of the Li Mountain could defeat him easily. The 7 rulings were all from the Li Mountain. Everyone of their rank on the honor roll of Green Cloud ranked much higher than Tang 36. Yet Tang 36 seemed to never think about the difference in ranks. When he looked at Go Hanshi, his eyes lit up and he became excited. The word fear was never in his dictionary. He originally wanted to challenge Shuang Huanyu, who ranked 10th on the honor roll of Green Cloud on the second night of the Ivy Festival. His fight was rejected only because the school objected to it. Tonight, he decided to join the Tradition Academy, but he immediately got a chance to fight the 7 rulings. He didn't want to miss this chance. Yes, this was a good opportunity. If I didn't remember incorrectly, the third night of the Ivy Festival is the literary test. Go Hanshi didn't look at Tang 36, but only quietly looked at Chen Changsheng. "Since even the princess became your apprentice, then you should be very knowledgeable. Also, I heard you still haven't successfully purified yet, so I think the literacy competition would be a good option." He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood it. Li Mountain Sword Sect challenging the Tradition Academy was basically Go Hanshi challenging Chen Changsheng. The palace was silent. Go Hanshi sounded very reasonable and showed Li Mountain Sword Sect's pity for the weak and pursuit for equity. Go Hanshi's comment meant that since the third night was a literacy competition, Chen Changsheng didn't have an excuse to not compete with him even if he didn't purify successfully yet. However, this suggestion was in truth not pitiful or fair. Go Hanshi read 3,000 scrolls of the way and learned all the teachings from both the north and the south. Even the old professors who studied the scrolls of the way for their entire life in the Li Palace couldn't score better than him on the literacy test. This was a fact acknowledged by the entire continent. If they were only talking about Xiuxing, Go Hanshi wasn't strong compared to those elders who had Xiaxing for hundreds of years because he was younger, but in regards to knowledge, he was the most knowledgeable. He wanted to compete against Chen Changsheng in the literacy competition. How was this fair? This was completely bullying and would be utter dominance by the strong elite. Luo Luo's look became sharp and she stared at Go Hanshi. She shouted, "Nonsense!" Go Hanshi's expression didn't change. He first made a salute to her and then said, "May I ask, what is nonsense?" Tang 36 laughed contemptuously. "The entire continent knows that you have read all of the scrolls of Wei and that you are the most knowledgeable. Where can we find someone comparable to you? You actually want to compete with that kid in knowledge. Don't you feel any shame? To actually suggest it, how is it not nonsense?" Go Hanshi looked at him and said calmly, "I am also a commoner. My memory skills are not better or superior to than others. Since I was a child, my family was very poor. Also I couldn't begin reading, supposed to be Xiuxing, right after I was born. The only thing I can do is read. Reading is my xiuxing. Knowledge is my strength like power is a tiger's strength. I am representing Li Mountain in this challenge to the Tradition Academy. Should I really abandon my strength? I use my strength to live on. Why should I feel shameful? I use my strength to defeat my opponent. How is it nonsense? What a stupid argument. I am best at sleeping. If I want to compete with you on who could sleep longer, will you also agree? Tang 36 said. Go Hanshi smiled and said, if there is such a competition as the sleeping competition in the Ivy Festival, then I will. Tang 36 got stuck, but after a while, he laughed contemptuously. Then how is the literacy competition going to be? Do you actually want the bishop to give us tests? Why do we have to get so complicated? Since we all didn't participate in the second night of Ivy Festival, isn't it more straightforward to just have a fight? Go Hanshi spoke calmly, if you insist, I have no problem with it, you can decide both competition type and who competes. People all felt a little surprised, even Tang 36 didn't expect Go Hanshi's sudden change of attitude. Following Go Hanshi's sentence, Guan Fei Bai and other two young disciples of Li Mountain walked up to him with empty expressions. Seeing this, people then realized that they misunderstood Go Hanshi before. The so-called literacy competition, indeed was an automatic win for the Li Mountain, but fighting would be even worse for Qin Chongsheng because he would have even fewer chances to win. Among the southern ambassadors, there weren't many people coming from the Li Mountain sword sect. Beside the elder Xiao Song Gong, there were only 4 other youngsters. They were 4 of the 7 rulings. At this moment, Qin Chongsheng spoke again. He looked at Go Hanshi, I agree with you. Anything obtained from xiuxing is their own ability. Just like how when rice eaten, it turns into energy. It's our freedom to use the energy to do what we want. Fortunately that I am also a commoner and I also have read some books. Both were commoners and both had read some books, which was really coincidental. Therefore it's good for them to compete. After all you are unwilling. The bishop looked at Qin Chongsheng and laughed, hiding deep meaning within. Then he looked outside of the palace. The fall wind was a little cold. The lights of the 7th of July were only in the ordinary families, but not in the royal palace, making it even colder. The old man wore his clothes tighter and said, if the event ends without a fight, Qiu Shanjun will definitely feel unwilling later when he finds out. Since Tang 36 could not participate in the first 2 nights of the Ivy Festival, he has been feeling unwilling. Also since the Southerners didn't participate in the first 2 nights of the Ivy Festival, why don't you guys just fight? Since it is already so late, please make it fast. The door was opened and the lights from the night pearls emitted in the darkness. The square in front of the palace became very bright. Outside of the royal palace, though the streets in the capital were still crowded. Far away there were people igniting the eternal fires. In the southwest corner, there were fireworks burning. There were hundreds of people who stood on the staircase in front of the palace. They were all looking at the 2 groups divided into the east and west of the square. They all had feelings. Some were indifferent, some felt worried, some felt happy, but none of them were nervous. In the Ivy Festival in the recent years, the competitions between schools in the capital hadn't stopped. There were always some dramatic events occurring. In the Ivy Festival this year, the first night was forced to end early because Luo dated Tian Ji. There wasn't anything exciting that happened on the second night. The third night, everyone thought the main scene would be the proposal from the southern ambassadors, but an exciting event had happened. Now, they were finally facing the real fight. But unfortunately before the fight even began, the result was already known. Because the results were known, none could get nervous. Go Hanshi wouldn't fight himself. His xiuxing stage was already much higher than others in his age. Like Qiu Shanjun, he was no longer in the honor roll of Green Cloud but in the honor roll of Midas. If he fought Luo Luo or Tang 36, the match would be unfair. Previously he suggested to have a literacy competition with Qin Changsheng because of the inequity in regards of strength. Since in the literacy competition people only need to speak, there would be victory and loss but no wounds and death. In the competition between the Tradition Academy and the Li Mountain Sword Sect, the Tradition Academy was allowed to choose both how and who to compete. The Li Mountain Sword Sect seemed to act generous, but actually there's no difference. The disciples from the Li Mountain Sword Sect who came to the capital, were all among the 7 rulings. It's difficult for the Tradition Academy to win any one of them. Originally I was going to challenge the 4th ruling. This kid know about this. Tang 36 pointed at Qin Changsheng and said to Luo Luo, but since tonight is a fight between schools, then I can't just do whatever I want. The 4th ruling is the strongest, obviously I will let you take over. I want to try to defeat the kid named Qi Jian. Luo Luo said, I am fine with it. Qin Changsheng thought a bit and said, if we do this, the chance to win is small. Tang 36 looked at him and said sarcastically, I wanted to use the ancient horse race method. Let our weakest fight their strongest. But the problem is you are way too weak. We can't even let you get on the field. Obviously we can only try to win 2 fights continuously, so you don't have to get out and lose face. Luo Luo actually felt very confident about Qin Changsheng even though she didn't even know where her confidence came from. At the moment, the people from the Li Mountain Sword Sect walked out. The one who walked in the front was a young man. He was not even fully grown yet but actually looked even smaller than Luo Luo. He's Qi Jian, ranked last, and also was the weakest among the 7 rulings. Qi Jian was Li Mountain Sword Sect Master's close-door disciple, last disciple he would take. He was very young, but had ranked in the top 10 on the honor roll of Green Cloud, until on one meeting 2 years ago. He barely lost to Zhuang Huanyu, so he was dropped to 11th, but no one dared to look down on him. Because he's really small. His rope appeared very loose, blowing up by wind, looked somewhat cute. Tang 36 saw this scene, sighed and said, how can I even hit him? Qin Changsheng sighed and said, sounds like you can actually beat him. Tang 36 felt very angry, stared at him. Tang 36 laughed, didn't speak. Tang 36 suddenly remained silent for a while, then said, if we can fortunately win 2 fights, this kid doesn't have to get on. If I lose, then Luo Luo you should just surrender, so we lose 2 fights continuously, then this kid no longer needs to fight. Qin Changsheng noticed his word, fortunately. Although he's fearless, but it doesn't mean he was blinded by his own enthusiasm. Tang 36 knew the opponent was strong. Luo Luo didn't understand, why if he lost, she had to surrender too. Was it really more important for Master to not go up than the loss of the Tradition Academy? Yes, the Tradition Academy only got a few sparrows like us. Is it really shameful to lose to the Li Mountain Sword Sect? Fine, it's certainly shameful, but that doesn't matter, as long as you don't go up. If you don't go up, then they can't get back the reputation they lost today. Tang 36 looked at the calm person standing in the opposite at the square, said, let them feel unwilling. After saying this, he held on to the handle of his sword, walked towards the opposite side. Chapter 74, The Youngster's Sword. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Why did Li Mountain Sword Sect want to challenge the Tradition Academy? Because they came all the way from the south to propose to Su Yu Rong, but were stopped by Qin Changsheng. They had to think of a way to regain their pride, as Go Han Shi admitted. Only then could they leave the Zhou royal palace calmly, although sparsely. With Tang 36's schedule, whether the Tradition Academy won 2 times in a row or lost 2 times consecutively, Qin Changsheng wouldn't need to step into the arena, and therefore, Mountain Li's sword sect couldn't earn back their pride. Although Luo Luo thought this action was kind of shameless, it was rather interesting. She showed her support through silence. However, Qin Changsheng actually really wanted to interact with Go Han Shi, who was rumored to have understood the entire scrolls of the way. Chen Chongsheng wanted to say something to Tang 36, but he had already entered the arena. Wind was blowing wildly outside and the palace was getting colder as the night drew on. Tang 36 stood in the field and took out his sword while glancing around. His handsome figure supplemented with beautiful hair that was blowing in the wind attracted the female students of Mountain Virgin and Green Light who were standing on the stairs of the palace. No matter what they thought about Tang 36, they couldn't have guessed that before he even arrived at the arena, Tang 36 made some meaningless yet irritating gestures. Tang 36 saw Qi Jian's thin figure from 10 yards away and was stumped. He suddenly remembered something and glanced at Zhuang Huanyu and sighed, "Look at this child. How small was he 2 years ago? And you were shameless enough to win." Obviously, Zhuang Huanyu wasn't going to reply to that. He laughed coldly, but it meant the same thing as the previous words Chen Chongsheng said, "And you think you can win against him?" The name, the 7 Rules of Heaven, is well known throughout the world, but people who never met them could never have thought that even a small child like Qi Jian was in it. He saw Tang 36 and bowed. The expression on his face showed his nervousness or even shyness. Tang 36 wrinkled his eyebrows slightly and asked, "How old are you?" Qi Jian answered, "I will be 14 years old in 2 months. Tang 36 could never give up an opportunity to insult Zhuang Huanyu like this. He glanced at his position and scoffed. Then he looked back at Qi Jian and asked, "Since you are so young, that is it fine to not fight?" Qi Jian's expression turned serious and replied like a small adult, "The Tradition Academy used the princess's status to pressure us, used the marriage vow to pressure us, and used the righteous cause to pressure us. My senior isn't here to defend or debate for himself because he's innocent. Therefore, as the lower classman, I must help him regain his pride." Binov Kong Tang 36's expression became serious as well. "Wrong. The people who used parents' words and factions' promises to pressure us, are you guys. It's also you guys who tried to use the righteous cause to pressure us. Everything that has happened was all started by your elders. We are simply defending ourselves. And your senior. He tried to marry Chen Chongsheng's fiancée, and Chen Chongsheng should be sorry. Do not forget, the marriage vow is still there and the white crane is still here as well." Behind Chen Chongsheng and Luo Luo, the white crane was resting on a bronze statue. Its whiteness contrasted against the night. Qi Jian was silent and spoke no further. His small hand held his sword handle and slowly, he drew the weapon out of its sheath. Just from this simple action, a powerful aura was released from his body. The thin and small youngster gave off the pressure of a master. The spectators suddenly became silent. Su Shiji and others' expressions changed. Even Mao Qiuyu's expression became more serious. Prince Chenlu praised, "The 7 Rules of Heaven sure aren't an ordinary bunch." Tang 36's expression became serious and he drew his sword from its sheath. He was known for his talent even when he was young. He was prideful and cool. Even after he left Wen Shui, came to the capital and entered Heavenly Academy, he was still the same. He knew Qi Jian would be the most powerful opponent he faced of his peers. He knew the techniques of Mountain Li's sword sect would be more powerful than those of his family's legacy. Perhaps he needed to study in Heavenly Academy for 2 more years to actually defeat the 7 Rules of Heaven. But tonight, he still wanted to win. He lowered his head and glanced at the floor. Wild grass was growing out of the crack beside his shoes. He raised his head, stared towards Qi Jian and said, "Let's begin." Qi Jian's expression was serious, "Let's go." Their voice echoed through the night in front of the silent palace. The wild grass that was growing in the crack was suddenly blown backward, as if it was tearing apart. The wind started blowing violently and 2 shadows appeared and rushed toward the center of the field. A loud crash. Tang 36 and Qi Jian met, the swords in their hands also clashed against each other. Sharp wind was swirling around their bodies and it lifted their shirts. It was as if a rainstorm had approached and landed on the ivies outside of Palace Li. two swords encountered each other in the night. The starlight that was reflected from the two swords were flowing like a stream. For sure, they were no ordinary weapons. Sword of Wen Shui. Someone realized the identity of the sword in Tang 36's hand. The sword that was as clear as a mirror that could reflect starlight was actually the legacy sword of the family of Tang in Wen Shui, the sword of Wen Shui. Grandfather Tang gave the family's legacy sword to Tang 36 for him to use in the capital. This showed how much he loved his grandson and also proved how much hope he placed on Tang 36. Furthermore, it showed that he decided to appoint Tang 36 as the head of the family in the future. Some people were shocked by the Wen Shui sword, and some were surprised by the sword in Qi Jian's hand. The sword in the thin youngster's hand was dark and dull. It seemed to possess no blade and was broader than ordinary swords. It seemed less of a sword, but more of an iron ruler. Yes, this sword was the Iron Rule. Iron Rule was the relic sword of the elder in Mountain Li's sect of punishment. The head of Mountain Li gave Qi Jian a relic sword to travel through the continent. This could only show how much hope he placed on this discipline of his. Tang's legacy sword against the relic sword of Mountain Li. Who would be stronger? That was what the spectators in front of the palace wanted to figure out. At least until now, both of these swords seemed to sustain each other's attack. Tang 36 and Qi Jian couldn't hear the discussion of the spectating crowd. All of their concentration and mind was on their swords. The two swords created a barrier and two oval surfaces appeared in the night sky. They covered up the two youngsters' body and crashed into each other. The oval surface reflected the starlight from the dark night sky. Countless murderous powers were flowing inside the bright surface. Millions of hidden power shot out from the back of the two youngsters. The rocky field beneath them couldn't handle such terrifying power. With cracking noises, dozens of holes appeared on the field and they spread outwards like a spider web. Principal of Heavenly Academy, Mao Qiuyu, raised his eyebrows slightly. He lifted his sleeve slightly and a pure yet powerful essence covered up the stone stairs in front of the palace. He was a powerful Xiaoxingist and was titled the Wind of Two Sleeves. All of his power was hidden in his sleeves. No matter how intense the fight between Tang 36 and Qi Jian was, it couldn't affect the people spectating the fight on the stone stairs. But he didn't care about the people on the field. The crane gave a cry and it spread its wings and flew. It slashed through the night and landed on the roof of Wei Yang Palace. Jin Yulu stood in front of Chen Chongsheng and Luo Luo. Xiao Songgong held his sword handle and coughed. Dozens of cracks appeared at the two sides but it suddenly stopped and couldn't travel no further. Looking at the scene in the field, the spectators were surprised and shocked. One of them was a famous young Xiaoxingist. One of them was part of the well-known 7 Rules of Heaven. Both of them are ranked on the honor roll of Green Cloud. Even if they were more powerful than peers of their age, that didn't surprise people. What surprised people was the current situation. Before the battle started, people thought although family of Tang in Wei Shui was a grand family who lasted thousands of years, their legacy couldn't be compared to Mountain Li. Simply regarding techniques and precision, Tang 36 would lose to Qi Jian. However, since he was older and Xiaoxinged earlier, at least his amount of qi would be greater than Qi Jian's amount of qi. Who knew that after the first counter, Qi Jian didn't show a trace of weakness in the competition for the number and pureness of qi? Many people didn't understand the reason. Tang 36 himself knew exactly the reason. Even if he and Qi Jian had the same talent, the Xiuxing technique of Mountain Li's sword sect was stronger than that of the family of Tangs. After a long time of Xiaoxinging, even the slightest difference would become a great disparity. And there was the most important point. He was lazier than Qi Jian. Although he pushed himself very hard for the Ivy Festival to challenge Shuang Huanyu and didn't even visit Qin Chongsheng because of this, it was only for a few months. He was the only son of a great family. Just like Shuang Huanyu said, he was born with a golden spoon in his hand. He was loved by his grandfather and lived a happy life. Even if he xiaxinged a little harder, his grandmother would rebuke the entire family. His maids would think of ways for him to slack off. On the other hand, the disciplines of Mountain Li's sword sect were mostly from poor families, and Qi Jian was no different. Even if Tang 36 thought with his foot, he knew that Qi Jian xiaxinged much harder than him. Although his opponent wasn't even 14 years old yet, his time spent meditating was probably much longer than his time spent meditating. Suddenly, a cry was heard in the night sky in front of the palace. The nightly wind was disrupted and the reflection of the stars on the two-oval surface was messed up. If it was a pool of water, it was as if someone threw a rock inside the pool. Wen Shui's sword and iron rule were separated for the first time since its encounter. Then they clashed against each other again. In a single moment, the two swords struggled against each other for dozens of times. That loud cry was the sound of two swords clashing. Because it was too fast and the noises too rapid, it seemed to not stop in between. The clashing noise suddenly stopped, and so did the wind. Two shadows separated from each other and stood on the ground. Just like before, dozens of yards apart. Tang 36 lowered his head and glanced at the floor. Now the wind and sword was calm, the wild grass once again stood straight. Except earlier that grass was beside his heels. Now it was in front of his shoes. Tang 36 raised his head and looked at Qi Jian who was on the other side. He noticed that thin youngster was still standing in the original position. "You are good," he said. "I thought since I ate 2 more years of rice than you, even if I'm terrible, I should be on the same level as you. I never thought I would step back half a feet more." Qi Jian looked at him and asked seriously, "Are you going to surrender?" Tang 36 felt insulted. "Do you think I'm a boring person like that?" Qi Jian was confused and asked, "Then why did you say something like that?" Tang 36 answered sincerely, "I'm just reminding myself that I cannot be lazy anymore in the future." Chen Changsheng was behind him. "It's not right." Qi Jian said honestly, "Truly, it's no good. But it will be something of the future. I still need to win against you tonight." Tang 36's shirt was floating slightly and his eyes brightened. Qi Jian's expression turned serious and he waited calmly. Chapter 75, Collapse the Clouds. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Everyone from the Wen Shui Tang family knew that their young master was not good at long battles, not because he had no stamina, but because he got bored of fighting easily. Tonight, Tang 36 appeared to very bored of the fight. He stepped out with his right foot. The grass was being blown down by wind. Tang 36 Wen Shui's sword carried the starlights and was thrusted at Qi Jian. The sword Qi broke the air and faintly, fire could be seen. Return of Night Cloud. Among the spectating crowd, there were people who knew this sword technique and were calling it out. Tang 36 used all of his qi. The sword qi became more rampant as if it was actually burning under the sky. Several clouds were slowly floating above the square. They were lit up by the sword and it looked as if they were burning too, like the crimson clouds at the sunset. More terrifyingly, infinite sword spirits were hiding in the burning clouds, the sharpest sword spirits. People were all shocked thinking that there was reason for this arrogant youngster to be so arrogant. Go Honsher also became serious. He had thought that, when Tang 36 left Wen Shui to Xiuxing in Heavenly Academy for several months, he must have become stronger and was no longer just ranked 36th on the honor roll of green clouds. But he didn't know that he improved this fast, and was on such high level already. Above the sky, the clouds were burning. Sword Qi was thrusted at Qi Jian's face. His skinny body was shaking and his little face became a bit pale, but there wasn't a hint of fear on it. He shouted and placed his ruler horizontally in front of his chest, like 2 mountains slowly closing on a river, blocking out all of the sunlight. Tang 36 continued move up, fire came along his sword. As he walked, his sword got brighter and on its tip, a cluster of white and glaring light was formed. The dark square was first lit up by clouds and then suddenly, it became as bright as day, as if the morning sun had just risen or as if the falling sun was hoisted back up. Falling back of the setting sun. The spectating crowd again surprisingly shouted. It wasn't until now could the elites finally ascertain that Tang 36 had already fully learned the true meaning of the sword techniques of the Wen Shui Tang family. Return of night cloud. Falling back of the setting sun. A sea of maple. The Wen Shui 3 movements. The Wen Shui 3 movements were the strongest sword techniques of the Wen Shui Tang family. This set of sword techniques only had 3 moves, but it could change the world. Of course, with Tang 36's current Shushing stage, even if he learned this sword technique, he couldn't fully express its power, but it was strong enough. Even for someone as lazy as him, with 4 full years of Shushing and his hard work in the recent several months, he finally mastered it. He was originally going to use it in the Ivy Festival, to destroy Tian Hai Air or in the key moment when he was fighting against Zhuang Huanyu, but he didn't have the chance. Tonight, he had the chance to use it against Qi Jian. The crowd was shocked again and began discussing. Chen Chongsheng was confused, so he asked Luo Luo, what happened? The 3 movements are very powerful. It's the burn to kill technique. Luo Luo said, besides this, people are shocked because they didn't expect Tang 36 to use his strongest methods at the very beginning. Chen Chongsheng remained silent as he thought about what was wrong with it. No one does that. Luo Luo knew that her master lacked experience of Shushing and fighting. She thought a bit and said, this isn't normal. It was certainly abnormal. In the square, whether it was Priest Academy or 13 Division of Green Light, or the southern sects such as Mountain Virgin, the elders were getting ready to analyze the details of the battle for their disciples, but how could they know that just as the battle began, Tang 36 would use his strongest sword technique? The result would be out soon. How would the teachers and elders of the schools and sects even have time to say anything? They could only sigh or be shocked and say nothing. Xiaoxianists rarely use their strongest technique right in the beginning of the battle, not because of temperament but because the strongest technique was the key to victory. Using it meant that the result of battle would be out soon. Such scene would only occur in battles between people with obvious strength disparities. Extremely confident elites would use this method, or people who were losing and knew they couldn't win would use the method. Tang 36 and Qi Jian had similar strengths. Normally, the fight would take much longer. He didn't have any reason to take the risk to see the result as the battle began. Tang 36 wasn't impatient or too confident, and of course, he wasn't unconfident either. He knew that Qi Jian's quantity and quality of qi were slightly higher than his own. Moreover, the sword technique of Li Mountain Sword sect was probably more sophisticated and stronger than that of Wen Shui Tang family. If he took the time to fight, then he would lose eventually. He wanted to win, so he had no choice but to get on the offense first. Getting on the offense depended on who would impose his momentum first. He unhesitatingly used the Wen Shui 3 movements. His return of night cloud connected to falling back of the setting sun. The 2 powerful moves pushed towards Qi Jian like mountain and sea to directly shroud him. This was the so-called momentum. He had deeply analyzed the battle between Zhuang Huanyu and Qi Jian 2 years ago. He knew Qi Jian's weakness. He believed that although Qi Jian must have become stronger and more mature after 2 years, he definitely didn't completely fix his weakness. Because after 2 years, a 12-year-old child, actually 11 and several months, is still a child, not even fully 14 yet. After all, a child is still a child. Children were too young, had too few experiences, and most importantly, could not stand as much pressure as adults. Not everyone was like Chen Chongsheng, who had been living under the most terrifying pressure in the world since he was 10. Nav Om Qi Jian was the smallest disciple of the Li Mountain Sword sect, but he was one of the 2 students who faced the most pressure in the Mountain Li. The other was Qiu Shanjun. He was not even 12 yet, but he could already fight against the strongest student in Heavenly Academy, and although he lost, it still shocked the world. The most epic granduncle of Mountain Li who found out about this event while traveling had evaluated. As long as Mountain Li has this child, it will not fall for 1,000 years. Such high evaluation brought heavy pressure. Qi Jian had been singing and studying under this high pressure. Although he was young, he became more and more reticent like a little adult. But just as Tang 36 anticipated, he was only a child. Tang 36 used the Wen Shui 3 movements as he first attacked to try to trigger the pressure Qi Jian was facing. He wanted to defeat Qi Jian by simply using this pressure. Besides Mao Qiu Yu and other elders, only Go Hanshi immediately understood what Tang 36 was trying to do. His emotion became more and more serious. He knew that his junior was very talented, but because of his age, he always had a weakness. 2 years ago, he lost to Zhuang Huanyu. People all thought he lost because he lacked experience and didn't shushing long enough, but he knew that the youngest junior lost the battle because he was not determined enough. The reason why he wasn't determined was because Qi Jian felt flustered. He was flustered because he had too much pressure. As if he expected it, facing the sword momentum burn like a cloud at sunset, facing the white light like a setting sun on the tip of Tang 36's sword, Qi Jian remained calm. His iron rule was still stable and he didn't look scared at all. The two invisible mountains were still slowly closing up and Go Hanshi could see that. He began to become anxious. Go Hanshi frowned. People would probably have thought that Tang 36's idea of hiding in his sword spirit was shameless because he was tricking a child, but he didn't think so. Like what he said before, as long as it's one's own strength, then people should use it. Since it was a battle, then regardless of one's mind or capability of taking pressure, all should be attacked. He just felt unfortunate because his youngster was stronger than the opponent but lost because of his mental state. Tang 36 already appeared in front of Qi Jian. His Wen Shui sword had already ignited all of the clouds on the sky. Even the grasses in the gap between the stones on the square were fully colored red. Fire was everywhere and the setting sun shrouded the world. Qi Jian looked determined. He placed the iron rule in front of him like a mountain defending the brook in his heart refusing to dry out. Tang 36 did not give him a chance. After one roar, Wen Shui's sword drastically shook as if there were tens of thousands of brooks flowing on the sword eventually turning into a river. The burning clouds in the sky, the setting sun on the tip of sword, the red grasses on the ground all fell on the body of sword and fell into the river to become tens of thousands of gold coins. Along with the sword spirit, the river gradually flooded the shore. The trees on the shore were firing up like the red maple in the fall. The last move of the Wen Shui 3 movements. A river of maple. A little fear appeared on Qi Jian's face. Now many people saw it, he was going to lose. This close-door disciple of the master of Li Mountain Sword sect did not even have time to fully express the power of Li Mountain Sword technique and was going to lose sadly like this. Seeing the daze and pain in his disciple's eyes, Go Hanshi could no longer stand it. He shouted to the field, flying the clouds on distance and close mountain. Qi Jian heard the words but he did not understand why his senior would say this sentence as this key moment. This sentence a very common move among the Li Mountain Sword techniques. More accurately speaking, it was in the Calm Heart Scroll that every disciple would learn. However, just like how he practiced sword techniques before in the Li Mountain, Qi Jian did as what the senior said and did not hesitate at all. He raised right knee, twisted his wrist slightly, took back his iron rule and moved back like a lotus in wind. As he took back the sword, the two slowly falling mountains paused in mid-air. Tang 36's sword thrusted in, shined in the sky and moved to Qi Jian instantly. Ca. Part of Qi Jian's clothes broke and fell off. A cut appeared on his shoulder. He looked shabby, but he actually got away from Tang 36's sword momentum. No one had thought of this result. People were certain now that the key was Qi Jian's retreat. How was the retreat so great that Qi Jian could dodge the Wen Shui 3 movements? Qi Jian clearly knew what helped him dodge the Wen Shui 3 movements was his movement method and sword spirit. But the premise was the retreat. He must retreat first and then he could stand still again. The retreat was admitting his weakness and following along with the momentum. Was the mountain distant or close? Sometimes, was the cloud on the sky coming or leaving? What Go Hanshi taught him was not an actual sword technique, but was how to correct face pressure. Because of age, because of some objective reasons, there would always a moment when one could not take the pressure. Forcing oneself to stand the pressure was truly brave, but learning how to retreat was more wise. Go Hanshi used his wisdom to help Qi Jian remove the pressure from Tang 36 Wen Shui 3 movements. Now, it was Tang 36's turn to bear the pressure. Qi Jian's expression turned calm and his sword momentum revitalized as sharp as the rock in the mountains. But different from before, his iron rule followed the clouds and moved up. The two mountains no longer slowly closed up like before, but rather, they completely fell off. The wind blew hard. The youngster stabbed his sword forward, which broke the setting of the sun. His sword momentum fell down like the cliff. The cliff suddenly broke, which caused the clouds at night to collapse. Tang 36 hummed as a result. He took his sword back to defend and stepped on a cloud to move back. His move was indescribably casual and smooth. A noise came up now. It was the sound of the interaction between Wen Shui's sword and the iron rule. Just in an instant, the situation was changed. In one round, a wound appeared between Tang 36's belly and chest. He fell down, holding the sword at the side. His hand was shaking slightly. He knew that he's in a disadvantage, but he was not flustered. Suddenly, a voice came up from behind him. Retreat again. Tang 36 heard that it was Chen Chongqing's voice and he thought, what are you talking about? I was standing with a sword calmly waiting Qi Jian to attack and looked so handsome while doing so. If I moved back again, wouldn't I look awkward? Although he thought in such way, he instinctively moved back several steps. Right after he left, an extremely deep fissure appeared on the ground where he was standing. Tang 36's expression changed. He then knew that Qi Jian's sword spirit actually came soundlessly to him. Until now, the opponent's sword spirit was used up. The mountains suddenly fell, blocked the river and destroyed the maples on the shore, but the rock that came out actually flew farther than people saw. If Chen Chongqing didn't warn Tang 36, he would probably be heavily wounded by now. Go Hanshi felt surprised. He looked towards Chen Chongqing. The spectating crowds in front of the palace were all quiet. Everyone's eyes all fell on Chen Chongqing. Tang 36 only had fought with Qi Jian for a few moves, but in the few moments that they fought, each had encountered extremely big hazards. Go Hanshi could see through the meaning behind the Wen Shui 3 movements, and one shout helped Qi Jian to counteract it by using the most common technique of the Li Mountain sword techniques. He was able to defend against it through retreating. Such knowledge and such wisdom were truly applaudable, but he was Go Hanshi, so no one felt too shocked or surprised. But why could Chen Chongqing see through Qi Jian's sword momentum too? Why did he look like he was so familiar with the Li Mountain sword techniques? Was he also like Go Hanshi in that he possessed vast knowledge? No one dared to believe in this conjecture. Xiao Songgong also didn't believe in that. He remembered the old thing that happened several hundreds years ago and looked towards Jin Yulu in the opposite side of the square. His look became even more hostile. The silence in the field only remained for a really short amount of time. It was broken again. Chen Chongqing seemed like he didn't feel the several hundreds of eyes falling on him at all. He took back his vision from Tang 36 and stared at Go Hanshi at the opposite side. Flipped golden tube. Sea essence. Shadow on the window. Forest longsword. He spoke these 4 sentences continuously. Those were the names of 4 sword moves. The 4 moves in the Wen Shui Tang family's sword technique. Chapter 76, Not bad. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Hearing Qing Chongqing's voice, Go Hansher's expression turned serious. Split the ghost of mountain. Horizontal star hook. Essence dew of tree. He said the three phrases. They were three combos. The three combos of the technique practiced by Mountain Li's sword sect. The two didn't look at Tang 36 or Qi Jian who were on the field, and they didn't look at the confused crowd on the stone stairs in front of the palace. They just looked at each other and stated the techniques. In fact, when Qin Chongqing said the first strike, Go Hansher started countering him. Qin Chongqing's second attack was a reply to Go Hansher's counter. Their voices floated in the silent Wei Yang Palace and into the arena and darkness of the night. Their voices weren't loud, but they were clear. Especially in the ears of Tang 36 and Qi Jian, their voices were like thunder as it struck down with all its might. Qi Jian's expression was serious. He held his sword and cried out loud. His thin body left shadows in the darkness because of its extreme speed. The dark iron rule in his hand struck through the night wind silently. It was like a demon with a rock as its snack. Split the ghost of mountain. Tang 36 became cautious. He raised his sword to hang in front of his body. The second combo that Go Hansher called for was horizontal star hook, but he didn't know what it was. He didn't know if it would be as strong as splitting the ghost of mountain, but he faintly knew that the three combos used by Qi Jian were of the same technique. They can amplify each other so that their power can reach staggering heights. If Tang 36 were to use his own method, he probably would take the first two hits, but he wasn't sure if could sustain the last and strongest combo. Qin Chongqing's voice was still echoing in his head. Those four words were clear and he was familiar with the four sword techniques. In this moment, he didn't have time to think how Qin Chongqing knew about the sword techniques of his family. He reacted instinctively and followed Qin Chongqing's words. He raised the sword in his hand. Just when he raised Wei Shui's sword, he noticed something wrong. How could he connect those four sword techniques? Flipped golden tube is the 7th combo of Yuan Feng technique. Sea essence was the 11th combo of Kai Zong sword. Shadow on the window was the 3rd combo of Yuan Feng technique. Forest longsword was the beginning of Kai Zong sword. They were sword combos from two different styles. How could they be mixed and used? The path of qi of these two techniques were completely different. How could he force them to connect? Wasn't Qin Chongqing afraid that his qi would travel in opposite ways and get him injured internally? He followed his teacher to practice the Tang sword when he was young, but he never heard that he could use his family's sword technique like this. Even if Tang 36 was confused, he didn't have time to sort it out now. Qi Jian's sword already arrived, and after the terrifying power of split the ghost of mountain, the form of horizontal star hook began to take shape. Tang 36 made a decision and used flipped golden tube. Connected it to sea essence. His qi traveled to his wrist and then suddenly dropped. He followed an undiscovered path. Only this way could the flipped golden tube be connected to sea essence. Tang 36 was mentally preparing himself for the internal injury due to wrong path of qi. Except that nothing happened. His qi comfortably traveled from the acupoint of his wrist into the veins. He wasn't injured, but that comfortable and open feeling made him want to cry out for joy. Tang 36 became confident and his sword was slashing like the wind. It stopped Qi Jian's sword and switched from sea essence to the shadow on the window. There was still no problem at all. His path of qi was traveling swiftly. He even felt that those two sword combos were not from two different techniques and that they should originally be used together. Countless sword clashing noises were heard in the night sky. The people spectating on the stone stairs saw Tang 36's body become strangely swift, just like a puppet with broken strings. In the moment of his rush, it seemed awkward, but it gave off a logical feeling. No matter how powerful Qi Jian's sword was, it couldn't seal Tang 36 inside. After the sword clashing, Qi Jian finally used essence dew of tree. This was the last combo Go Hanshi commanded for. This combo was an execution combo in the sword techniques of Mountain Li. It took the death and isolation from the snow mountains and single peaks. Hidden behind the fancy sword technique was the deadly, murderous way. The iron rule seemed to be covered in snow and frost. Pressure was slowing coming onto the field. Just like the arrival of winter, it was slow, yet unstoppable. If he didn't hear Chen Chongqing's voice, Tang 36 probably would have used the most aggressive combo and tried to end the fight in a tie. Or perhaps, he would try to end Qi Jian and himself in the technique and attack Qi Jian's weakness in pressure. But he didn't need to do it now. He just used a simple combo. Long Sword of Forest. It was the beginning combo of Family Tang's Kai Zong sword. If it was any other time, this beginning combo of Kai Zong sword would be useless. But previously, Tang 36's sword successfully countered Qi Jian's techniques and therefore, he was ready for the last combo. No matter what angle, form, path of Qi, or state of mind, he was ready for everything. The forest was covered in frost. But his long sword hung above the single peaks. He drew back in the sword with his wrist. When Shui's sword was dragged across the iron rule and a spark was lit. The sword couldn't harm Qi Jian, but it started the wind. After the nightly wind, his elbow hit Qi Jian's sword-wielding hand. It was a clean shot. A light clash. The iron rule flew in the air and landed in the depths of darkness. Tang 36 took 2 steps back and put his sword back into its sheath. Qi Jian lowered his head and looked at his empty right hand. He was confused and then a moment later, he realized that he had lost. Just a moment, his eyes were wet. He was sad and disappointed. Seeing him like this, Tang 36 was irritated. What are you grieving about? You are still stronger than me. Normally I can't defeat you, but just the Tradition Academy didn't lose. He was a prideful person, and he needed to state the truth. Although Tradition Academy didn't lose, it didn't mean he won. Qi Jian shut his mouth tightly and didn't want to cry. His small face was red and said with a crying tone, "Thank you." Then he glanced at his senior, who he respected the most and wanted to understand what had happened. Go Hanshi was looking at Chen Chongqing. The entire field was silent. Everyone was looking at Chen Chongqing. A lot of people didn't understand what happened, perhaps even Tang 36 himself couldn't explain it properly. Everyone now realized the most important point was the last sword draw and elbow hit. That combo was so delicate and precise that it was strange that it happened. But everyone knew that what led to that precise strike was the previous setups. The sword combos that Chen Chongqing stated. Mao Qiu looked at Chen Chongqing surprised. Prince Chen Lu looked at him with respect in his eyes. Su Shiji and the head of family of Qiu Shan didn't look so well, and Mou's expression was complicated. She didn't understand earlier how Chen Chongqing could leave Tong Palace. Now she knew that actually everyone underestimated this youngster. Tonight, many people understood Chen Chongqing for the first time. Including Su Shiji and Mou who have met him before. The wrinkles on the bishop's face was relaxed and he said, "Not bad, not bad." Everyone knew his comment of "not bad" wasn't targeting Tang 36, but rather Chen Chongqing. Chapter 77, Tell a Story in a 4-9 City. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The silence was broken by Go Hanshi when he looked at Chen Chongqing and asked, "Is this the story recorded in the Gue Yuan way of scroll?" Chen Chongqing nodded and said, "The footnote on the 2nd chapter." Go Hanshi raised his eyebrows slightly. Indeed, the names of these 4 sword moves are recorded, but the author didn't mention the order. Chen Chongqing said, "Both the West Capital Notes and the Yuyang Geography book mentioned a spectating Taoist monk. According to the Taoist monk, the order of the moves were the order in the Gue Yuan way of scroll." Go Han Shi realized that both books did have such record, and before Qin Changxing pointed it out, not many people would connect the two books to the story in the Gue Yuan way of scroll. The main reason was that the Gue Yuan way of scroll was not one of the classics emphasized by the tradition. Since it was published several hundred years ago, only a few people have read it. The spectators were all confused because they didn't understand the conversation that Qin Changxing and Go Han Shi were having. Even the elites of the Six Ivies and masters of the Qiu Shan family felt like they were listening to a book from heaven. The bishop frowned and asked Prince Chen Lu, who was next to him, which way of scroll are they talking about? Prince Chen Lu was not so sure either, something called Gue Yuan way of scroll. The bishop felt angry, how come I never heard of it? Of all the people, only Go Han Shi and Qin Changxing remembered the story from the Gue Yuan way of scroll. The story was about an ancestor of the Wen Shui Tang family fighting against a demon elite in the Xian province. When every spectator thought that the ancestor would lose, the ancestor used 4 sword moves consecutively and defeated the demon elite immediately. The 4 sword moves were Flipped Golden Tube, Sea Essence, Shadow on the Window, and finally Forest Longsword. The reason why the battle was recorded as a story was that all the spectators couldn't figure out how the 4 sword moves could be used as a combo. How could the seemingly disconnected qi transfer between moves, interact with the demon elite's moves and suddenly become so fluent? Why did you think of using these 4 sword moves? Go Han Shi asked. Flipped Golden Tube was picked because of his personality. He uses abnormal moves that others don't often use. You countered with Split the Ghost Mountain. Which is tough. Qin Changxing explained, your 3 moves covered both rising and falling momentums, and at last, the starlights will all fall down to cover the mountain fully. The key is that killing depends on the power one exerts. Go Han Shi said, right. Qin Changxing continued, I can't think of any sword moves in the Tang family that could take on your moves. The only possibility was if he used the Wen Shui 3 movements again, but you understand Tang 36's personality. He won't follow through with such actions even if it meant that he would die, and I had no time left to convince him. Tang 36 felt somewhat mad, what kind of person did you say I was? Qin Changxing ignored Tang 36 and looked at Go Han Shi. Actually I just got lucky. I randomly used the flipped golden tube, but countered me so well that you did not leave me with many options. Then I thought of the story on the Gue Yuan scroll of Wei and remembered the 4 moves used by the ancestor of Tang family. Go Han Shi thought for a bit and said, the demon elite who lost to Tang family's ancestor indeed used tough and murderous moves, but the moves were all different from that of the Li Mountain Sword sect. I also remember the 4 moves in the Gue Yuan scroll of Wei, but I never knew that you could use it the way you used it in the previous situation. Qin Changxing said, I wasn't sure if the 4 moves would work either, but you reacted too quickly and too fiercely. Also Qi Jian himself is a stable Xiaxingist, so I couldn't think of any other options, so this was my best bet. Not many people knew the Gue Yuan scroll of Wei, fewer people even remember the 4 moves, and even fewer people can recall the move and dare try it in the previous situation. Go Han Shi looked at Qin Changxing and said, not bad. Qin Changxing said, I went first and gave 1 more move than you. If you had went first, then the result may be different. Go Han Shi said, not bad, but fortunately, this is only the first round. Qin Changxing said, I heard from Tang 36, you read all of the scrolls of Wei. You are a great person. Go Han Shi said, I said before, I simply read a bit more books than others do. Qin Changxing replied, I said before too, luckily, I also had read some books. Go Han Shi stared at him and remained silent for a while. It seems that you are very confident. Qin Changxing's expression was calm and he bowed to Go Han Shi, please enlighten. Wind softly blew by, and starlights shined on his face. Previously in the palace, Go Han Shi spoke these 2 words to him. Now, it was his turn to speak these 2 words back to Go Han Shi. Simply a change in order, but it represented many things. When Go Hanshi and Chen Chongsheng began the conversation, the spectators standing on the stairs were in quiet discussions, but their voices got gradually lower until it was silent. Go Hanshi and Chen Chongsheng did not intentionally play a scene in which heroes appreciate each other. But to the spectators, Go Hanshi viewed Chen Chongsheng as his opponent. This fact was already shocking news. The second fight, in such atmosphere, started calmly. Obviously, the one who stepped out from the traditional academy was Princess Luo Luo. Because Tang 36 won against Qi Jian, then in order to help Chen Chongsheng not have to go out and compete, she needed to win the second battle. Luo Luo was completely confident in her victory, but none of the spectators thought so. Even Jin Yulu frowned, thinking that Princess may lose. Because her opponent was Guan Fei Bai, the fourth ruling of the 7 rulings. At the same time, he was ranked 4th on the honor roll of Green Clouds. Guan Fei Bai walked to the field and saluted to Luo Luo. His eyebrows slightly lifted, not because of fear but because of gloom. Luo Luo understood what was he thinking and said, "Do you think it's a very depressing thing to fight me? Because you have to worry about hurting me, you can't use your power fully. Also, your arrogance and domineering personality doesn't make you seem like the type to regulate his power, so it feels like I am taking advantage of you." "No, I don't dare to," Guan Fei Bai said expressionlessly, "but Princess should know, no matter what, I don't dare to hurt you. I am a student of the Tradition Academy. Since you, Li Mountain Sword Sect, wants to challenge the Tradition Academy, of course I have to stand out. It's the best if you treat me as a regular student and fully express your strength. If you can't and think too much before you attack, which results in a loss, don't blame me for losing." Luo Luo looked at him and said, "Because that's your own choice." Luo Luo was very short, much shorter than Guan Fei Bai. But she looked up at him expressionlessly, like she was the one looking down on him instead. Guan Fei Bai's expression turned cold and he said, "Princess's words are reasonable." Among the 7 rulings, he was right in the middle, but he was the most narrow-minded, arrogant and cold. He was easily irritated, and even when facing against Luo Luo, he would become angry. Although everyone says the ranks on the honor roll of Green Clouds change frequently, people always forget something. Before the change, the Destiny Pavilion is never wrong. He stared at Luo Luo's eyes and said word by word, "4 is 4, 9 is 9, and no matter what, 9 can't surpass 4. Chapter 78, Another 7 Stars at the Remote Dong Lin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After hearing this, everyone's face was blank. But Chen Chongsheng was a little surprised. The 4 and 9 in this sentence obviously meant the ranks on the honor roll of Green Clouds. So Guan Fei Bai was ranked 4th, and Luo Luo was ranked 9th. He only saw the ranks of the honor roll of Green Clouds once on the wall outside of the Priest Academy, and he didn't exactly remember who was ranked 9th. "In the inn outside of the Mausoleum of the Books, I told you, besides Su Yu Rong, on the honor roll of Green Clouds, there are 2 other people that I don't want to bother." Tang 36 said near him, "One is the wolf bow in the north and the other was the mysterious girl. Of course, she is not mysterious to you at all, so this thing isn't interesting as I thought it would be. By the way, when can you let me show off a bit?" Chen Chongsheng now recalled, Tang 36 had mentioned that there was a mysterious girl from Yao race whose rank was even higher than that of Zhuang Huanyu on the honor roll of Green Clouds. Even then, many people had guessed it that girl should be the Princess of Yao. Then he remembered, at the first night of the Ivy Festival, he asked Luo Luo how she knew Zhuang Huanyu, and Luo Luo responded by saying that because her position was so close to Zhuang Huanyu, it would be hard to not know him. What position? Now, he understood. She obviously wasn't referring to geographic location, because the neighborhood of the Herb Garden was the Tradition Academy, not the Heavenly Academy. Position was the position on the honor roll of Green Clouds. No matter how little Luo Luo cared about secular things, she would still know the person's name right below her on the honor roll of Green Clouds. Chen Changxing then realized why one as arrogant as Tang 36 would leave Guan Fei Bai to Luo Luo. Luo Luo's expression didn't change. Holding the handle of the falling rain whip with her right hand, she looked at Guan Fei Bai and said, "If one only looked at the rankings, then why would we even need to hold the Ivy Festival, and what is the meaning of the Great Trial? To determine who's stronger or weaker, after all, requires a fight. Otherwise, how could Tang 36 defeat your youngest junior?" Guan Fei Bai said indifferently, "That's only because someone helped." Hearing this, Tang 36 got furious and yelled, "Sounds like your senior doesn't have a mouth." Go Hanshi extended his hand to signal Guan Fei Bai to stop. He looked at Luo Luo and said calmly, "What Princess said is reasonable." Then he turned around to Guan Fei Bai and said, "Junior, try your best in the fight. Please don't let the reputation of our sect down." Guan Fei Bai no longer spoke a word. After thinking quietly for a while, he took out his sword, looked at Luo Luo and said, "Princess, please enlighten." Although the great Zhou was strong and the capital was big, amongst the young generation, only Su Yu Rong could beat this person. If he was only arrogant and angry all the time, how could he be one of the core disciples of Li Mountain, and how could he be one of the 7 rulings? As he held on to his sword, he suddenly calmed down and all of his arrogance disappeared. The arrogance all fused into his sword. It was a very common sword. Of course, the Li Mountain Sword sect cared a lot about talented disciples such as Guan Fei Bai. Even if they didn't treat him like Qi Jian by gifting him the Iron Rule, they definitely had presented him with an extremely sharp sword, but he didn't accept it. He insisted to use this common sword because he had sworn that before he surpassed the oldest senior, Qiu Shanjun, he would never switch swords. Everyone knew Qiu Shanjun's sword was called Reverse Scale, but only his close schoolmates knew that the sword their oldest senior used was actually very common. It was made by a regular blacksmith on the bottom of Li Mountain and was worth only 3 silver coins. He viewed his oldest senior Qiu Shanjun as his role model, and a goal that he must transcend, so he only wanted to use a common sword. The sword was common, but the person wasn't. The people standing on the staircase looked at Guan Fei Bai as he slowly walked to the center of the square. Their expressions changed. As he walked forward, the arrogant and cold young elite's aura gradually became calm and soft, but the sword in his hand became stronger and stronger. He stored all of his spirit into the sword. "Don't you worry." Tang 36 looked at Chen Changxing's face, seeing that his expression didn't change, he felt a bit surprised. Only by looking at the steps Guan Fei Bai took as he walked into the center of the square, only by looking at his ability to store qi into his sword, Tang 36 knew that he definitely couldn't beat him. Although Princess Luo Luo's rank was higher than his, did she have a chance of defeating him? Chen Changxing looked at the field and said, "Luo Luo will win. Why do I even worry?" Tang 36 didn't know how to comment. He thought to himself, "Only because she calls you master. This kid looked dull, but where does his confident and egotistical personality come from?" Everyone felt the same as Tang 36 felt. Seeing the strong aura revealed from Guan Fei Bai, everyone thought Princess Luo Luo had no chance of winning. Only Chen Changxing knew what Luo Luo had learned during her several months at the Tradition Academy. Ranked 9th on the honor roll of Green Clouds. That was a thing of the past. Now even he couldn't be certain how strong Luo Luo became. Looking at Luo Luo who was walking towards the center of the square, looking at the little girl's dress that was softly blowing in the wind, he suddenly felt a strong urge. Back in the days when it was only him and Luo Luo in the Tradition Academy, the things Luo Luo learned, the improvements Luo Luo made all stemmed from him. Even though he wanted to be humble, even though he didn't want to take credit, he couldn't help but know that Luo Luo was the student fully taught by him. The strong sensation was the wanting to be recognized. He really wanted to know, if now Luo Luo fought with Su Yu Rong, who would win? He didn't purify successfully yet and couldn't Shouxing, for now, it seemed like he would never have the right to speak to that girl face to face. But Luo Luo is his student. If Luo Luo can defeat her, would that represent something? This thought suddenly came up, and he could no longer remove it from his mind. After all, he was still only a youngster, in the adolescent period. How can he not have some competitive feelings? Yet when everyone thought the second fight between the Tradition Academy and the Li Mountain Sword Sect was going to begin, a voice came up. Mou looked at the field and said, "Princess has a noble identity. Even if there's almost no danger, I still won't agree with the fight." Upon hearing this, people became wordless. This was the problem that people worried about before. The Li Mountain Sword Sect also had proposed it, but just Luo Luo wasn't concerned about it herself, didn't mean the Great Zhou court wouldn't care. How should this fight continue? Go Hansher felt the stares from the high-status people and understood their request. After being silent for a moment, he said, "Only compete on technique, not on qi." Hearing the words, Guan Fei Bai lifted his eyebrows slightly but he didn't say anything. Everyone knew the Yao race was excellent at comprehension. Princess Luo Luo was the only daughter of the White Emperor and obviously, her talent was rare. If it wasn't that Yao couldn't shushing with human methods, her bloodline talent would be on the same level as Su Yu Rong and Qiu Shanjun. How would she be only ranked 9th on the honor roll of Green Clouds? If after she grew up as an adult, she practiced the shushing method of the White Emperor family, she obviously would be much stronger, but as of right now, she was not an adult yet. In addition, she could not use human shushing methods to run her qi because of her race. Then by just looking at the quantity and quality of qi, she obviously wasn't as good as the disciple of Li Mountain Sword Sect. Now that Go Hansher proposed to only compete in technique, he just discarded Guan Fei Bai's biggest advantage. Mou's words and the high-status people's pressure, looking from one perspective, were unfair. However, Go Hansher said it himself, and Guan Fei Bai agreed to it silently. Sure enough, the Li Mountain Sword Sect was confident, and the 7 rulings were arrogant. Luo Luo didn't expect such change to happen and so, habitually she turned around and looked at Qin Changsheng. Qin Changsheng didn't say anything. He knew Go Hansher's proposal was a choice made under the elite's pressure. This competing method seemed to give Luo Luo an advantage, but only he knew that this was not good for Luo Lu because he had already helped Luo Luo solve her issue of not being able to run qi in her special Yao vessels using the human shushing method. Because of White Emperor's powerful bloodline talent, although it has been only a few months, Luo Luo has already stacked her qi to a very terrifying amount. Speaking from general strength, she was now probably already stronger than Guan Fei Bai, and because of this, he was certain that Luo Luo wouldn't lose tonight. Now the competition only allowed the use of technique and not qi, the one who actually lost the biggest advantage was not Guan Fei Bai, but her. Luo Luo looked at Qin Changsheng. Everyone also looked at Qin Changsheng, feeling confused. It was obvious that the proposal was advantageous to the Tradition Academy, so why did it take him so long to agree? Go Hansher thought this youngster didn't want to accept such arrangement because of his pride and said, "You know that this proposal has another meaning." He didn't say win or lose, neither did he say advantage or disadvantage. He said, Qin Changsheng and him. Only competing in techniques and no use of qi meant that he and Qin Changsheng would definitely have to communicate with their teammates. The last 2 fights between the Tradition Academy and the Li Mountain Sword Sect were combined into one. Go Hansher wanted to use this one fight to destroy the Tradition Academy. Qin Changsheng looked at Luo Luo and nodded. Luo Luo looked, calmly saluted and then turned around. Now looking at this scene, people already didn't feel as shocked as they were previously in the palace when she respected this seemingly ordinary youngster so much, because in the previous fight between Tang 36 and Qi Jian, Qin Changsheng already proved a lot. Luo Luo walked onto the field. Guan Fei Bai coldly raised up his sword and placed it horizontally in front of his chest. His mind was already as calm as frost. In his eyes, there wasn't a cute little girl or the princess of Yao race, only an opponent. Luo Luo raised the falling rain whip. The tip of the whip flew up and broke the air. It then paused in the darkness. The two stood about 33 meters apart from each other. Unless one used chi to form sword waves to attack the other, there wouldn't be any danger. Seeing this scene, Mou was satisfied and the rest also stopped worrying. As long as Luo Luo didn't get hurt, no one really cared whether the Tradition Academy or the Li Mountain Sword Sect won. Instead, the high-status people all looked towards Go Hanshi and Chen Chongsheng, who were standing at the two sides of the square, eager to find out who would win. Luo Luo lifted the falling rain whip, but the one who began was not her, but Chen Chongsheng, who was standing behind her. If she was an arrogant youngster like Tang 36 or Guan Fei Bai, she might have felt somewhat unhappy or at least give some resistance, but Luo Luo wasn't arrogant. In the last few months, her school life in the Tradition Academy seeded a belief in her mind that whatever her master did was always right and that whatever he did was good for her. So when she heard Chen Chongsheng's voice, she unhesitatingly used the whip as a sword. She stabbed towards Guan Fei Bai, who was around 30 meters away. Lift Earth. This is the first move of the Wind and Rain sword technique of Mountain Zhong. It was the starting move. He began the fight with this move, which was surprising because it was so normal. Everyone thought the fight move Chen Chongsheng would let Luo Luo use would be rarely known or at least be a very powerful move. Who would think he used this common move? The wind and rain of Mountain Zhong lifted the earth and caused a small momentum of wind and rain. Where can fear be found and where can crying be heard? Just like playing chess, the Chinese type of chess, he placed the first piece on the 3-3 spot, which was again, not surprising. Some people even felt disappointed. The falling rain whip flew up as it broke the air and made a roar that seemed powerful. Luo Luo's chi didn't move, and so, this sword move only had its form and no spirit. Because they were around 30 meters apart, it obviously couldn't hurt Guan Fei Bai. But since it was a competition, he had to take the move, so many elders and elites were watching. Normally when faced with this common sword move, Guan Fei Bai would react it himself, but since the competition tonight was not a fight between individuals, but a fight between the Tradition Academy and the Li Mountain Sword Sect, he had to wait for his senior's advice. It was already humiliating to know that the famous Li Mountain Sword Sect was actually challenging the Tradition Academy that had fallen for more than a decade, and that their trustworthy youngest junior actually lost to a student in the Tradition Academy. He was under a great amount of pressure and had to handle this seriously. Go Hanshi spoke as he heard Chen Chongsheng's words. Third move of Dong Lin 7 stars. A complete silence. People looked at Guan Fei Bai moving his sword in air and didn't know what to say. Chen Chongsheng raised his eyebrows because he was certain that he never saw this sword technique before. The scroll of Wei was like the ocean. There were countless sword techniques whose name contained the word star, and there were more than 10 sword techniques whose name contained 7 stars. Yet, he truly never saw this 7 stars sword technique before, and never heard of it. He said, last move. He didn't speak the name of sword technique, but straightforwardly speaking, the last move was obviously the wind and rain sword technique of Mountain Zhong. The last move was named Hug the Rains. It was a retreating move, a defensive move. The move with most dense defense in the wind and rain sword of Mountain Zhong. Chen Chongsheng never saw the Dong Lin 7 stars, so he only hoped to defend against it first. Great! The principal of Heavenly Academy Mao Qiu softly smoothed out his long beard as he looked at the field and applauded. As an elite in the capital, his comment obviously grabbed many people's attention. Su Shiji asked, have you even seen this sword technique before? Never. Mao Qiu said, that's why I said great. Suddenly someone shouted out, that's the sword technique of the Qingjiang sect in the Donglin province. After hearing the voice, people looked towards where it came from and saw that the one who said it was an unknown young student from the southern ambassadors. Someone asked, Qingjiang sect. How come we never heard of it? Many people were staring at the young student, so he felt a bit nervous. He explained, that's a small sect. I am from Qingjiang, so I know. Mao Qiuyu sighed and said, "Sure enough, it's extremely great." Chapter 79, From the Rural to the Temple. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. People finally realized that Mao Qiuyu was praising Go Hanshi instead of Qin Changsheng. Luo Luo's first move, as instructed by Qin Changsheng, seemed to be ordinary, but it was actually the best choice to starting out a fight. The first person to move has to wait for the opponent to break the first move. This was the reason why the first attack should be defensive, to make it difficult for the opponent to break the momentum. From Mao Qiuyu's point of view, it was a great choice, but everyone would have thought the same, so it didn't look extremely clever. Everyone could see that Go Hanshi's counter move was no special technique, because what exquisite sword technique could an unknown sect of Donglin province create? However, it was extremely well done, but just like the spectators, Qin Changsheng had never seen this sword technique. Speaking nicely, Go Hanshi's counter was like a goat hanging itself on a tree by its horns so that its opponent couldn't reach it. Speaking plainly, Go Hanshi just spread some seeds into a farmland and never tended to it. He, himself wouldn't know what this farmland would look like next year or whether the seeds would grow or not. Noel Daren, then how would Qin Changsheng know? Rain's welcome was Qin Changsheng's response. Although it was just a battle without the use of qi, Luo Luo was still concentrated. She focused all her mind on the whip. This move was almost perfect. Go Hanshi said another move. Still, no one knew the origin of this sword technique. Only until a foreign student who passed the semi-trial yelled out in shock did people find out that this sword technique was created by an old Xiaxingist from a broken temple in Wenshui. It was a bit famous in that region. Tang 36 was not happy because he grew up in Wenshui and never heard of this sword technique. How did Go Hanshi know this even when he lived in Mountainly for most of his life? Very nice. A woman wearing a white gown from Mountain Virgin complimented. Qin Changsheng told Luo Luo to defend using the 7th combo of Wind and Rain Sword of Mountain Zhong. Go Hanshi then said another technique, and it was once again an unknown move from a small sect. Qin Changsheng countered it again. In just a moment, Luo Luo and Guan Fei Bai attacked for dozens of rounds. The spectators on the stone stairs didn't grow silent, but rather, the discussions got louder. People glanced at Go Hanshi with admiration. It was amazing of him to memorize so many foreign sword techniques. Su Shiji nodded slightly, and the head of family of Qiu Shan grew calm. He was satisfied with the current situation. Some people looked at Qin Changsheng and thought he did well too. Under his instructions, Luo Luo only used Wind and Rain Sword of Mountain Zhong, but was still able to defend it successfully against the strange and foreign movies of Go Hanshi. There were 2 times that she used the same combo, but their effects were completely different. In some people's eyes, another person who performed well was the 4th rule of heaven, Guan Fei Bai. The fact that Go Hanshi knew about this many strange and foreign sword techniques made it clear that he was well read and wise. The world knew that he understood and finished the entire scroll of the way and all of Mountain Li's sword sect own treasured sword techniques. Although people admired him, they weren't surprised. However, every combo he instructed was used by Guan Fei Bai without hesitation. What did this represent? This showed that Guan Fei Bai also knew about these foreign sword techniques and could control and use them properly. There are thousands upon thousands of sword techniques in this world. People didn't even hear of some strange or foreign ones, but he could use them all. How much time did it take to practice them? How much determination and preservation did this take? Sword sect of Mountain Li's name is not in vain. It's no wonder that many outstanding young people come from that place. Mao Qiuyu said as he looked at Guan Fei Bai with a complicated expression. Hearing his words, the spectators woke up from their amazement. The students of 6 Ivies, especially the students of Heavenly Academy, felt embarrassed. Just this moment, the situation on the battlefield changed. Following Go Hanshi's voice, Guan Fei Bai's sword technique suddenly changed from the foreign ones to the most commonly used Xian Zong sword technique. This sword technique was the basic combo of the southern sect. It was very clean and open. It was Guan Fei Bai's most practiced sword technique as well. In the younger generation of Xiaoxianists in the continent, Qiu Shanjun would be the best at using this sword technique while Guan Fei Bai would rank second. Seeing the board and common sword techniques being used in the arena and looking at the long sword slashing through the night sky, people finally fell into silence. A lot of people knew about this sword technique. A lot of people practiced this as well. But not many could use this sword technique in the fashion Guan Fei Bai demonstrated. He was able to show off the sword spirit completely without using qi. Tonight, Guan Fei Bai taught a lesson to the young students on the stone stairs by doing so. Following Go Hanshi's voice, Guan Fei Bai's mountain door sword advanced and the pressure fell on Luo Luo. For the first time, a heavy expression climbed up on her young face. Although the opponent's sword technique wasn't strange, following the foreign sword techniques, a unique rhythm was formed. Previously, she only used wind and rain sword of Mountain Zhong. It started from the fallen leaves and finished at the eastern mountain. Her rhythm was perfect, but as the opponent changed his moves, the rhythm stopped and it seemed that she was falling to the opponent's speed. How could she make a comeback? Guan Fei Bai looked at her expressionlessly and attacked with the force of raging fire which burnt the entire prairie. It was her turn to fight back. Luo Luo felt the pressure, but Chen Chongqing endured most of it. He never thought Go Hanshi would switch from the rural sword technique straight back to his mountain door sword in an unexpected fashion. In just a moment, he thought the situation was out of his control. Looking at the calm expression of Go Hanshi sitting on the other side of the field, Chen Chongqing admitted that this person was amazing. The battle between Xiaoxianists focuses on power and momentum. Power is qi while momentum is another more complicated concept. It could be sword technique, it could be sect, it could be relic items, and it could also be mental state. It's just like playing chess, one's amount of skill is determined by the situation of the game. The change from the foreign 7-star sword to the mountain door sword was basically a change from rural to urban. This change of rhythm was quick and deadly. The terrifying thing was that this sudden change enhanced the sword spirit of mountain door. Right now, the momentum was almost solidified. How could Luo Luo break through it with her sword? It was a simple change, but the undetectable wisdom and experience of Go Hanshi was hidden inside it. Chen Chongqing knew he was close to defeat. Although he had read and understood the entire scroll of the way when he was young and had studied tirelessly in the Library of Tradition Academy, he only touched the field of Shouxing for a couple of months. No matter how great his knowledge with different sects techniques and how experienced he was on the field, he had a long way to go before reaching Go Hanshi's level. He didn't want to lose and moreover, he didn't want Luo Luo to lose because of him. Although it would be difficult to defeat a genius who seemed to know every technique in this world like Go Hanshi tonight, he wanted to at least break even. In this kind of situation, he still retained his confidence. However, it was unrelated to his method of reaching the way, to satisfy one's will. Instead, he had this confidence because he believed that Luo Luo was stronger than Guan Fei Bai. Then in order to claim victory, he must not lose to Go Hanshi on the field of techniques. Countless scrolls appeared in his mind. The Shouxing books and sword techniques in the Library of Tradition Academy kept on appearing in front of his eyes. Pages were flipped through by the wind caused by the contacts of the swords. The moves and teachings of the past powerful Xiaoxianists were turning into images and they quickly flew before Chen Chongqing's eyes. Which move should he use?